Another interesting thing we can do with template literals is tagging them. And essentially, it just means that we can run our template literals through a function and have more control over our template literal. The example we're going to look at is going to be quite simple, but don't be fooled by that because tag template literals allow us to do very, very powerful things. For example, the whole styled components library, the most popular CSS in JS library, is built using tag template literals. With that being said, what we're going to do in this video? Well, in the index.html, I have the heading 1 with a text of info, as well as div with an ID of result. And then I also have the CSS class, and the class is blue. And of course, I'm just setting the color of blue. And up in the app.js, I have the author as well as the statement. So 2 strings, I set them equal to variables. And then I have the third one. Then I have the template string where I have the quote. And then I have some text before the variable, in between the variables, and after the variable. And of course, if we just console log it, of course, I have here is some statement, because of course, this is where I'm accessing the variable by some author, and it could not be more true. And then what is the plan? Well, we're selecting a result. So I'm using document, get element by D, get the result, and then I'm just inserting my quote. And my plan is following, where I would like to set up a strong tags around my variables and then add the class. And technically you can say, well, it's very easy. We could just do it here. I could just say, since I can add the strong tag, I'm adding it here. Let me add a closing one, strong, and then I can just place my variable. And of course I can add my class. I can say class, and then class is of course going to be blue, and we just need to place our statement. So let me grab the $sign, cut it out, copy and paste it. And then of course I'm going to have some statement. But what I would want you to think of is imagine that if you would have, I don't know, 20 variables or 30. So it would be somewhat of a pain of doing that manually like so. So that's where we could test it out, how we could set up a tagged template literal. So let me get rid of these tags, the first one, as well as the closing one. And let's go back to our initial template string. How we would set up a tag template literal? Well, first we would need a function. And then we would place the function before our template literal. So first let's set up the function. And we can do it, of course, anywhere we would want. But I'm going to do it all the way in the bottom. I'm going to say function, and I'm going to call it highlight. So highlight, like so. Then, for the time being, we're not going to pass any arguments. And we're just going to access our highlight function. So we just type it here, highlight. This is our function. And now we have a tagged template literal. Because what happens once we run our function, in fact, we're going to be able to pass in our template string in the function. And whatever we return from the function is going to be the value. Just to show you how it works, let's say if I'm going to return hello there, then what's going to happen is that now the console log is going to be hello there. Why? Well, because we don't have just a simple template string. We have a tagged template literal where we have the function, then without adding the parentheses right there, and then we just set up the backticks and then whatever value we'd want to pass in. Now, returning a hello there definitely doesn't solve our issue. So how we can work with the values? Well, you see what's really cool is once we set up this type of functionality, then as arguments, we receive 2 things. We receive all the string values. So I'm talking about here is the, then by, and then whatever string we have. And the second one, we access all the variables. Let me show you what I mean by that. So first of all, I'm going to name my first argument, I don't know, strings or text, but you can name this whatever you want. So text, and then one by one, we could access all the variables. Now, just to show you how it's going to work, if I'm going to go with arg1 and arg2, and if we're going to console log it, you're going to see something very, very interesting. So I'm going to have text, and you know what? By the way, I'm going to set this up in an object. So text, arg1, and arg2. Let's save it. And what I see here that text is going to be an array. So like I said, it's going to be all the text that we have in the template string. But then arg1 and arg2 is going to be our variables. Now that is, of course, if we know how many variables we're going to have. But again, let's imagine that we have 30. Are we going to do this? Or we're just going to type arg1, arg2, all the way up to arg30? Well, probably not. So there has to be a simpler way. Well, another way we could write that, we could access each and every variable. So if I'm going to change the arg1 and arg2 to a statement author, it's still going to work. So let me select them. I'm going to delete them all, like so. And then let's change it again. The variable name was statement. And of course, I'm just looking at whatever I have in a template string. And the second one was the author. So I could access them this way. And then, of course, if I console log it, then I'm going to have the statement and an author. But again, this would mean that I would know all my variables. And that's not very sustainable. So there has to be a better way. And what would be the better way? Well, that would be using the rest operator that comes with ES6, where I could just delete it. And don't worry, later on, we're going to cover this in a bit more detail. But the way it works is we're going to have our first argument, so text or parameter, and then we're going to have dot, 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 and then whatever name you'd want. So for my one, I'm just going to say vars. But please understand, you can call them oranges. And what you're doing right now is you're collecting the rest of the variables. So again, if I'm going to add 50,000 more variables in here, they're all going to be collected in this array. And just to show you that I'm not making this up, if we console log two things, text as well as the vars, what you're going to see is that we're going to have the array. Again, there's going to be an array of text, and then there's going to be our variables. And also, please keep in mind that text array is always going to have one more value than the vars one. Even if we're going to place some variable at the very end, there's going to be an empty string in our array of text or whatever the array of strings that we're getting. Always remember that. So in this case, we have 3 and 2. If we would have 3 variables, then we have 3 and 4, and on and on and on. Even if we add this variable at the very end of the template string. Now, with all this being said, what we would want to do? Well, remember, we wanted to set up a strong tags that would wrap our variables, correct? That was our big plan. So how we can do that in our function? Since again, remember, we are returning the new value from the function. That's the reason why we have hello there. Well, let's test it out. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to say that there's going to be a const of awesome text. So some kind of awesome text variable. Now this variable is going to be equal to what? Well, we have our text. That is going to be our array of strings. And what I could do is I can run the map method, and then each and every time I'm going to have some kind of item in there, well, I'm just going to add the actual variable, and I'm going to place it in a strong text. So how it's going to look like? Well, I'm going to go with text, then I'm mapping over my array, and then I can access two things, of course, when I'm using the map method in my callback function. I can access the item, so that's going to be each and every text that is in my array, and the second one is going to be the index. So what is going to be the index? All right. Now within the function body, what we're going to do? We're going to return. I'm going to say return, and we can right away set up another template string. And I'm going to say, please return the string that I have. So that is going to reference the item. So the first time is going to be here is the, and then we have by, and then we have rest of the text. That's going to be each and every item. And the second thing, I could access my variables. How I can access the variables? Well, I know the index, correct? So the first item is going to have the index of 0. Now the sum statement is also going to have a index of 0. How I can access it? Well, I have my array. The way it works is I'm right away going to set up these strong tags. Then we're going to have class of blue. Remember, we added that before. Then we're going to close out our strong tags. And then within the strong tags, we're going to access again the variable. We're going to say vars, and then we're looking for the same index. So again, the 0 item in the text is going to have a 0 index in the vars. So I can say vars, that is my array, and I would like to access the index. That's what I'm returning in the awesome text. And then we're almost done, but we would need to close out our strong tags. Now let's save that. Of course, we're going to get first undefined, but what I would like to do right now is a return, and then we're returning awesome text. And then it is an array, but we're going to use dot, and then we have a join. Now we just specifically say, well, how would one join it and make it as a string? And in my case, since I wouldn't want anything in between the items, I'm just going to have the empty quotation marks. We do that, and we right away see that here is some statement by some author. So what we're doing is we're wrapping our variables in the strong tags, but there's also a bit of an issue. What is the issue? Well, we're getting back undefined at the end. So why are we getting back undefined? Well, remember, text array had 3 items. Vars array has only 2. So as I'm iterating over the text array, I come to the point where I have the text array item with the index of 2. However, within the vars, there is no variable with an index of 2. Why? Because it's always going to be 1 less. And the way around that, at least one of the ways around that, we can just set up the OR statement where I say, all right, so get me vars index. However, if it is undefined, and just return an empty string, like so. And now, of course, we avoid that. So now we have here is some statement by some author, and then whatever else text we had. So this would be an example how we can set up a tag template literal, where again, we have a template string. And then if we place the function in front of our template string, we have more control of what essentially we're returning from the template string.